My little brother was born without a manhood. Grandma found a folk remedy, claiming that the heart of a dutiful daughter could cure any illness. The more devoted the girl, the more effective the cure. That night, they used a knife to kill my sister. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Hecate Audio for more great stories every day. Soon after, Grandma rejoiced. My grandson has grown. But they didn't know, a girl whose heart is taken will always return as a vengeful spirit. My brother's manhood was something Grandma begged from heaven itself. So she guarded it fiercely, keeping a small notebook where she recorded its growth each day. Whenever she saw progress, she'd proudly boast, "I've seen all the boys in this village. None are as strong as Tianbao. The Wang family has its pillar." Yet when my brother was born, there was nothing there. My mother had suffered so much to bear a son, and before she could even breathe in relief, Grandma spread my brother's legs. Nothing. The whole family turned pale. He's born impotent. I was 12 then, too young to understand. I asked a question, and my sister quickly covered my mouth, but father heard, and slapped me several times. Only later did I learn, born impotent meant being a eunuch. Grandma wailed and struck my mother, dragging her down from the bed. "It's your fault. If you hadn't wasted your body giving birth to those useless daughters, my grandson wouldn't be like this." Mother wept bitterly, silent from shame. She was the most typical woman in our village, submissive, patient, measuring her worth by suffering, by her husband, her mother-in-law, and the sons she could bear. That night, humiliated beyond measure, she hanged herself. That heartless woman. Couldn't she at least wait till my grandson was weaned? Now he's lost his manhood and his milk. How pitiful. Grandma's curses echoed as my sister and I cried in each other's arms. The next morning, Grandma's mood suddenly lifted. My dear grandson can be saved. She had hired a Taoist priest who claimed that while congenital impotence couldn't be changed, there was one forbidden ritual that could reverse heaven's order. It's called borrowing the dragon's root, he said. Of course, defying fate requires assistance. His eyes swept over me and my sister, smiling with satisfaction. Luckily, your family already has what we need. That night, I slept deeply. When I woke near midnight, my sister's bed was still cold. I went looking for her. The storage shed door was ajar. Inside, several shadows moved back and forth. I peeked through, and froze. My sister was tied to the ground, clothes disheveled like a lamb awaiting slaughter. My father stood over her, gripping an axe so tightly his knuckles turned white. The Taoist said, "The dutiful daughter's heart, an ancient remedy from this very village. You've seen the archway at the entrance? It was granted by the emperor himself, in honor of a daughter who tore out her own heart to save her father. So the assistance was her heart." My father hesitated, trembling. Grandma stomped impatiently. "Dog Wei, he's your only son. Do it, or how will you face your ancestors below?" A trace of humanity still flickered in my father's eyes. "They're both your children. Can you bear to let my grandson suffer forever? The fortune teller said you'll never have another son. Miss this chance, and it's gone." My sister's mouth was stuffed with cloth. She couldn't speak, only struggle weakly, tears spilling from her eyes. I seemed to hear her voice in my head. "Father, I'll be good. I'll earn money. Please, don't." My sister was always gentle. In winter, she washed everyone's clothes with bare hands until her skin cracked. She never dared take an extra bite at dinner, always saving the best for me. Grandma said shoes were wasteful, so my sister went barefoot up the muddy mountain to cut grass for the pigs. Her feet were cut open and infected, yet she still smiled, telling me she was fine. But none of that stopped father from swinging the axe. I heard it, flesh splitting, bone cracking. Her body twitched and went still. The Taoist sliced his sword through the altar, muttered incantations, and reached inside. Soon he pulled out a bloody, beating heart, still warm, still alive. He wrapped it in talismans, tied 8 red strings to it, the other ends bound around my brother's body. Fast asleep. Every beat of that heart made the threads tremble. Grandma, who never once stopped scolding me, now held her breath. She lifted the blanket and gasped with joy. "It's growing. My grandson's manhood is truly growing." It really had grown, emerging from the very ground. My father dropped to his knees, tears streaming. Our Wang line has an heir at last. What was he celebrating? I couldn't tell if he rejoiced because the shabby cottages and parched fields finally had an official successor. At that moment I watched a fly lift off my sister's eyelid, her mouth twitched. Then stilled. Her corpse remained unburied in the backyard. At dawn Grandma, impatient, paraded my baby brother around the neighborhood. She picked households without sons on purpose. Come see. My grandson weighs 9 jin. His face is blessed. He's a sign of prosperity. Mrs. Zhang, your daughter-in-law has 4 children but still no son. How pitiful. Just look a few times. Don't touch. Once ostracized for having no son, Mrs. Zhang now dared to witness my grandfather's pride. But the joy was short-lived. The baby stopped eating. Grew weak. Grandma hurried for the Taoist. Yet as they lit candles a cold wind snuffed every flame. The priest's face darkened. He urged them to relight but the flames died again. He stared at my grandparents with a sharp look. Tell me the truth. Has anyone died here in the last 7 days? My wife, she committed suicide here. My father stammered. The priest, seeing 2 shrouded bodies wrapped in torn mats, frowned and pulled aside my mother's blood-soaked garment. White hair had sprouted under her skin. A suicide does not carry such killing energy. The priest sneered. He hated being deceived. The marks on her neck are multiple. This was strangulation, not hanging. I held my breath. They said my mother had been weak after childbirth. But instinct forced my eyes to Grandma. Her endless curses choked like a hand crushing a fowl's neck. It was her she had killed. My father flushed. Mother. Tu Fuang just gave birth. Grandma remained unmoved. She had 2 useless daughters and still argued. She harmed my grandson. I taught her a lesson, a slip of the hand. What's wrong with that? Besides, that wasted body of hers limps on. How could you find a new wife? Don't think I don't know you and the widow Zhang have been close for ages. I'm helping you. Exposed before neighbors, my father reddened. He'd never dared defy Grandma. Seeing the pale little face of her grandchild, Grandma pleaded, Master, what should we do? The Taoist's ratty eyes fixed on me. The female ghost is about to become a white-haired Jiangshi. Mother and child will turn into crying ghosts. Don't think you can reverse fate for your son. Your whole house will suffer calamity. Tonight is the 7th night after the sister's death. Make Nha carry the corpse to the grave and bring these 2 back to the tomb. Mother and child are linked. They will follow her. On the wild hill under the night sky the priest smeared hearth ash over my sister and pasted talismans all over her. Her face was filthy. When I reached to wipe it he barked. A corpse at 7 days still holds 3 souls and 7 spirits. These talismans hold 1 soul together for your sister, so when you carry her to the tomb your mother cannot tell who is alive or dead. She will think both daughters are well and rest. Seeing my anger, he leaned in and threatened softly. Do you want your mother to become a restless ghost? If you refuse, I can dismember the body and bury it in parts and seal them with talismans. My mother had farmed all her life and in their eyes was less than an animal. I ground my teeth until they bled and carried my sister on my back in silence. She was so light, lighter than when she'd been alive. Skin stretched over bone. She had never eaten her fill. So how could she be heavy? The priest nodded in satisfaction. Remember, on the way to the grave the corpse's feet must not touch the earth or it will become a jiangshi. Only when you lower them into the pit and bury them yourself will this great deed be complete. The mountain path was rough and steep. I held my sister's legs to keep her steady, and when I bent down, her head tilted to one side. Her long hair fell over my eyes, blocking my view. She had always had beautiful hair, dark, soft, and flowing, but every time it grew too long, Grandma would cut it off to sell for money. My chest tightened. Something felt wrong. When she died, her hair barely reached her shoulders. Why was it so long now? The black strands cascaded down like a waterfall. And through the veil of hair, I suddenly saw a pair of bare feet, pale, mottled with corpse stains. It was my mother. She was following behind me. Her weak steps no different from when she was alive. Her voice trembled in the cold air. Uriah, it's Mom. Deia, Uriah, I want to see you too. A chill crept down my neck. I wanted to turn around, to see her one last time. But I remembered the Taoist's warning. Do not look back when walking the ghost's path. Every glance extinguishes one flame on your shoulder. And no matter who calls you, don't answer. I pressed my lips shut and followed the steps as taught. 7 steps forward. 1 pause. The grave had been dug earlier that morning, lined with talismans painted in rooster's blood. Just a few meters away, lightning split the sky. My heart sank. It was raining. Sheets of rain poured down, washing away the ashes and talismans from my sister's body. The Taoist had warned, ashes from the stove carry yang energy. They conceal ghostly energy for a short while. But as the charms melted away, her corpse grew heavier. I saw her fingernails, once neatly trimmed, stretching longer, curling unnaturally. The sealing spell was failing. By dawn, I stumbled home, drenched and shivering, only to hear Grandma's scream, "Dagui, stop the bleeding." The stench of blood hit me as I stepped into the yard. Father lay writhing, clutching his crotch, crimson soaking the dirt. "Master, save me." I saw Tu Fuang. She was there when I went to pee. Grandma froze mid-motion, her hands trembling. "It's gone. Everything's gone," she wailed. Then lunged at the Taoist. "You said they'd be gone for good. You said we'd be safe. You fraud." The old man kicked her away. "This spell is called borrowing the dragon's roots. I told you, reversing fate demands payment. The daughter's heart was only the catalyst. What you borrow, you must repay, with interest. That's the law of karma." Father's lips quivered. "Why didn't you tell us?" "You never asked." The Taoist sneered. "Your mother said as long as the family line continues, she'd pay any price." Their faces turned ashen. Neighbors gathered at the door, whispering. Grandma shouted to drive them off. "My son lost his wife and daughters. Let him grieve in peace." Someone muttered, "Grieve? She was laughing 2 days ago." Father's wound finally stopped bleeding, but he lay there hollow-eyed, moaning like a woman in labor. When I brought him medicine, he slapped it away. The pain must have been unbearable, but surely not as much as when my sister's chest was cut open. I wondered if it could hurt worse. He wanted surgery, wanted to fix what was gone. But where would we get the money? Sell the house? I quietly told Grandma, "Didn't you say the baby is the family's future? Even if Father's fixed, he can't have children anymore. Better save the money for the boy's education." The infant in the cradle didn't cry, didn't move, his eyes black and hollow, without pupils. I stroked his cheek and smiled. "Grandma, think of it, little Tianbao will carry on the Vong name. He has a noble forehead. Master said it's a sign of greatness. Our family's bound for glory." She clutched the baby, then looked at her useless son fainting in bed. After a long pause, she murmured, "You're right." The house was chaos. I hummed softly as I fried myself rice with 3 eggs and ham, luxuries I'd never been allowed before. I was mid-bite when a shadow passed the doorway. The Taoist. He grabbed my wrist, eyes sharp as knives. "Why has the ghost returned? What happened on the mountain?" I trembled. "I told you, the rain started as I was burying her." I finished quickly. "Go check if you don't believe me." He had checked. The grave was filled. Still, his frown deepened. "If buried, why is she back? Maybe Mother wasn't ready to leave. Maybe she wanted to see home one last time." His gaze darkened. Without warning, he yanked off my shoe. My foot was dry, clean, untouched by mud. "Rain, you said? Liar." He was right. Hours earlier, I had collapsed in the pit. My sister's corpse pressed on top of me, the rot and chicken blood choking me unconscious. When I woke, I was under a tree. How had I gotten there? How long had I slept? Amid the distant caws of crows, a cold, rough hand brushed my cheek. I wasn't afraid. I opened my eyes, and my sister's corpse leaned close, whispering, "Uriah, be filial for me." In our house, filial never meant love. My sister only feared Grandma's curses, Father's fists, and Mother's tears. She once whispered, "I won't marry that bastard Tranma Z." Aunt Chu in the next village said she can take me to Guangdong to work, room and board covered. "Once I save enough, I'll come back for you." She'd sewn the bus ticket into her coat lining. She never made that trip. Never saw her future. I wept, nodding. "Yes, sister, I promise. I'll be filial for you." After that night, Father went mad. Sometimes he saw my sister. Sometimes he knelt and begged my mother's ghost to forgive him. The Taoist told Grandma to slaughter a rooster to ward off evil. It didn't work. "He's guilty," Not cursed. The old man sighed. Maybe see a psychiatrist. When lucid, father begged grandma, "Give me money for surgery. I'm your son." She only cared about Tianbao. He'll need milk, clothes, school, all that costs money. She even comforted him. People say castrated dogs live longer. You've done your duty to the ancestors. Daegui, you've given us a son and 2 daughters. Father's voice broke. Duty? You think I'm breeding stock? She ignored him, hid her savings, afraid he'd steal it. Soon, rumors spread. His mistress, Widow Zhang, came visiting. "My love, haven't seen you in ages. Found someone else?" Father forced a smile. "No, just a small illness." "Illness?" She smirked. "That better not ruin my future." I pressed my ear to the door. After a few flirty words came rustling fabric and heavy breathing. Daegui, you're a eunuch? Tui Nhi. Listen, I'm getting surgery soon. We'll marry. Surgery? You think it's like fixing a tooth? You freak. Get out. During the struggle, when her clothes were torn, Widow Zhang grew even more furious. I wanted to be your wife, not your sister. Pay for my clothes, or I'll tell the whole village you're not even a real man. Wang Deqi. She didn't know that those were the exact words my father could never bear to hear. His eyes turned red, like a crazed bull. He grabbed the kettle of boiling water and smashed it straight at her. She stumbled back, too late to dodge. A loud crash echoed, glass shattered, and boiling water mixed with blood splattered across the floor. My grandmother rushed in at the sound, only to see Widow Zhang sprawled lifeless on the ground, her once beautiful face pierced with shards of glass, while my father sat amid the blood, sobbing hysterically. "Mom," she said, "I wasn't a man. But I am a man." That night, the 2 of them dragged her body into the backyard and buried it in the vegetable garden, in a hole originally meant for my mother. The whole thing took barely 15 minutes. For days afterward, my father lived in fear. But when no one came looking for her, he slowly calmed down. Widow Zhang had many lovers and often disappeared for months at a time. The women in the village even seemed relieved she was gone. That night, father called my grandmother into his room. "Mom, I have an idea. The ritual of the filial daughter's heart worked once. It can work again. We still have Ya, don't we?" Grandmother hesitated, but Tranma Zi came by yesterday. Said he already paid the bride price for Da Ya. Now that she's gone, he wants to switch to Ya, or we'll have to return 30,000 yuan. "Mom, you really care about that 30,000? My father's voice was cold and sharp, his eyes feverish. "Compared to my happiness for the rest of my life. What's 30,000? Grandmother forced a smile. "It's not that. It's just that Ya isn't like her sister. She's stubborn." "Then I'll break that stubbornness myself," he said. After that night, grandmother suddenly let me eat at the main table again. When I picked up a piece of meat, she instinctively wanted to scold me, but father shot her a warning look. She softened her tone. Ya, girls who eat too much meat get fat. Fat girls can't find husbands." I smiled foolishly. "But grandma, I need energy to study, right?" "Study?" Father slammed the table. "Didn't we tell you to quit school?" I ate calmly. "But school is free for 9 years. They only charge a little fee." "Grandma, you didn't marry me off to Tranma Zi. Lost 30,000, so shouldn't I at least study more, to earn money later and take care of you both better?" I emphasized, "take care." The exact words they couldn't resist. As expected, they reluctantly agreed. I was always the hard-headed type. I'd yield only if I got what I wanted. If they wanted me to be filial, fine, but on my terms. I would study, finish what I started, and no one would stop me. When I got into a top high school, my little brother, Wang Tianbao, had grown up. In those years, our family prospered. Once, the only son of the richest family in the village caught syphilis. His body covered in sores. My grandmother, hearing this, cut a piece of flesh the size of a fingernail from my sister's heart, boiled it into porridge, and fed it to him. Within 2 days, the sores disappeared completely. Word spread quickly. The villagers whispered that the Wang family had a spirit healer who could cure any illness. Even the village chief spoke to grandma with respect. Expensive cars from the city stopped by our house almost every other day. Grandma dried my sister's heart, more precious than gold, and locked her savings book away. All this money will go to my precious grandson. No one else should even dream of it. My brother Tianbao was obedient, brilliant, a prodigy with a photographic memory. He could recite essays and formulas backward after one glance. I followed every rule, taking care of him as if he were made of glass. When he fell while learning to walk, I panicked more than anyone. When he feared the dark, I'd tell him bedtime stories until he drifted to sleep. We always held hands when we went out, never apart. My friends teased me for being obsessed with my little brother, but I only smiled and said, "The more I study, the more I understand how hard my family worked. I regret what I did before. From now on, I'll be filial." My father looked at me with satisfaction. Yeah, your father's happiness depends on you." His gaze burned, greedy, like a demon staring at Tang Monk's flesh. But just when he thought the time was right, the only son of the richest man in the village suddenly dropped dead. Wang Biao died a horrible, and bizarre, death. Overnight, his entire body was covered in massive, egg-sized boils that turned a dark purplish red. The sores burst open, oozing foul pus, and when people found him, his chest was hollow, as if something had devoured his organs from the inside and crawled out through his belly. Even in death, his lips were curled into a grotesque smile. His father, Wang Fu, wailed in anguish, "My son, my son." Wang Biao's wife sobbed and said that before he went mad, he had kept muttering that something was inside him. When she asked what it was, he screamed in agony until he passed out, mumbling only one thing. "Da Nha, Da Nha is inside." My grandmother froze for several seconds, her body trembling uncontrollably as the neighbors began whispering among themselves. "Da Nha? Isn't that the eldest granddaughter of old Madame Wang?" "That's right. Didn't Wang Biao drink that immortal medicine from her too? Got completely cured overnight." "TCH. Sounds like black magic. Looks like it's backfired." Wang Fu snapped. He lunged at my grandmother, his hands closing around her throat. "Speak. What was in that so-called elixir? What the hell did you feed my son? You witch." My grandmother's face turned crimson as she struggled for air, wheezing. "It wasn't me. It's a divine medicine. I swear, my Tianbao took it too. He's perfectly fine." The neighbors panicked, afraid someone was about to die, and rushed off to call my father. A crowd burst in to pull Wang Fu away, giving my grandmother just enough time to slip free and flee home in terror. The first thing she did was yank down my little brother's pants to check his body. Only when she saw nothing wrong did she exhale in relief. "Thank heavens, Tianbao's fine." My father sealed every window shut. Outside, Wang Fu had gathered men to surround the house, shouting in fury. My father's face darkened. "Looks like we can't stay here any longer." He set a date and urged the Taoist priest to prepare for the heart extraction ritual. But that very night, the village secretary arrived, grinning slyly. "Madam Wang, I've got a profitable offer. There's a rich man in the city, deathly ill, who needs a maiden's heart. If it works, you'll earn a few million. We can split it, fair and square." My grandmother hesitated, but Dagui's still waiting for the heart. The secretary flicked his cigarette, smirking. "Dagui? That lust-addled fool? He's useless. But your Tianbao, that boy's different." Just then, my little brother came home, clutching an Olympic math exam with a perfect score. He said softly, "Grandma, my teacher wants to send me to the provincial camp, but it costs money. Maybe I shouldn't go." The secretary chuckled. "See that? The school here's trash. For Tianbao to have a real future, he'll need to study in the city, maybe even abroad. He'll need money to study, to marry, to make a name for himself. Isn't that worth more than Dagui's pathetic manhood?" Between a few million and her son's manhood, my grandmother didn't hesitate. She chose the money. She sent my father away under false pretenses. Just as I returned from school, a group of burly men grabbed me and dragged me into a car. But before the engine could roar to life, the trunk burst open. My father leapt out. He swung a club without mercy. striking my grandmother square in the head. I knew it. You've always favored Tianbao. Mother, you're vicious. That damned kid's life has nothing to do with me. If not for him, I'd still be a man. Tonight, I'll become one again, a real man. My grandmother's head was bleeding profusely, her voice hoarse as she screamed, "Nha, don't just stand there, help me." I stood still, watching them with hollow eyes. But, you're all my family. No matter which side I choose, it's still flesh of my flesh. Helping either one makes me unfilial. I can't choose. Moments later, the village secretary burst in with a gang of young men. Behind them, they dragged a rich man who was barely conscious. "Grab him," he barked. My father was overpowered, tied up, and thrown to the ground. My grandmother, blood streaming down her face, shouted, "Hurry, don't let him ruin the ritual." The altar was already set. The dying man lay in the center. And I, just like my sister years ago, was bound tight. The ropes bit into my skin, burning, and memories of that night came flooding back, how I tried to shield my sister. Only to be slapped so hard I hit the floor, bleeding and screaming. Tears blurred my vision. I crawled toward my grandmother like a broken animal, sobbing, "Grandma, I'm your granddaughter too. Please, please let me go." The ritual began, but this time, something was different. The Taoist had barely lifted his sword when a violent gust swept through the house. The candles flickered madly, talismans clattered against each other. And just then, outside the window, a faint figure began to form. My grandmother's eyes went wide with terror. "Master," she stammered, trembling, What is that?" The chill in the air was so sharp it froze the candles solid. Outside the altar, strings of red thread hung in layers, each carrying a chorus of wind chimes that rang louder as the shadows grew larger, a haunting melody that sounded like a spirit's call. Tongueless chimes, soundless travelers, only ghosts make them sing. The Taoist's face paled. "No, this can't be right. Why is there an evil spirit in your house?" I couldn't help but laugh softly. "Of course there is," I said. "Grandma, Dad, have you all forgotten? Isn't Madame Zhang's body still buried in the vegetable garden?" The moment I finished, the candles went out in unison. A gust of icy wind shattered the window, and something darted inside, long, flat, dried out like a lizard husk. It shot straight toward my father. His screams ripped through the air, his face torn and soaked in blood within seconds. "Nha, I was wrong. Please forgive me. I never meant to hurt you," he cried, crawling backward in terror. Madame Zhang's corpse chewed noisily. Her hollow eyes locked onto him with boundless hatred. The sight was enough to freeze anyone's soul. Grandma clutched the Taoist, trembling. "Master, please, save my son. I'll pay you anything." But he only gasped, clutching his peachwood sword without daring to strike. "It's too late," he said hoarsely. "The spirits latched onto him. She's come to collect his life." Though skilled, he'd clearly never faced something this bloodthirsty. She's been dead only a few years. How could her spirit be this vicious? Unless someone's been feeding her. Before he could finish, the door creaked open. My younger brother had returned from school. He stepped into the room, his shoes splashing through blood, eyes calm, face expressionless. Grandma, panicking, whispered for him to run. But the ghost froze the moment she saw him, hissing, recoiling, trembling in fear. The Taoist's eyes widened. It's you, he stammered. My brother, so sweet, so gentle, with our mother's face, tilted his head and smiled. "Me? What about me?" It was a smile too cold, too old for a child. He untied my ropes, walked to Grandma, and said softly, "Don't be afraid, Grandma, it's me, Thien Bao, your eldest grandson, and also your eldest granddaughter." That night, the one who came back from the graveyard with me wasn't just my brother, it was my sister too. "You're late," I teased her. "You missed quite the show." She smiled, kneeling to arrange the bloodied bodies like lambs awaiting slaughter. "Sorry," she said lightly. "Had to give a speech at school. Ran a little late." "That's fine," I replied with a smirk. "Good meals never spoil." Grandma's face quivered with rage. "Lies. Where's my grandson? Give me back Thien Bao," she screamed. I chuckled. Ah, the heart of a filial daughter, it really can heal. Grabbing the Taoist by his collar, I ignored his pleas and threw him toward the ghost. Helping evil do evil. That's a sin worth dying for. The old gate at the village in trance. You all thought it was a royal gift to honor a filial daughter, whose heart was ripped out. But that village never appeared in any record. It vanished. And the reason lies within that gate. I once saw words carved at its base, jagged, trembling lines left by a dying hand. Those who devour the heart of a filial daughter will perish within years. My sister's smile deepened. Inside their bellies, monsters will hatch. She whispered sweetly. They'll be drained, consumed, cursed. The more they eat, the stronger I grow. Your lives are the nourishment for my rebirth. Grandma, if you hadn't spent years selling off my heart piece by piece, I wouldn't have come back this soon. With her hands pressed together, she smiled, gentle, dutiful, like the perfect granddaughter she once was. Truly, she said, thank you all for your generous contributions over the years. No wonder, as my younger brother grew older, more and more of those who had once eaten a maiden's heart met their end. Before he died, my father still clung to his delusions. Da Nha, did Nha put you up to this? You've always been the most obedient, the most filial. I know you'd never harm us. Strange. Why does everyone always think I'm filial? My sister laughed, glancing around at the terrified faces. From the moment I could think for myself, I've hated all of you. Obedience has never meant filial piety. Of course, in your eyes, they're one and the same. Obedience born of hunger and fear. How could that ever be called filial? To cut open a girl, rip out her heart, and expect her not to resent you? On what grounds? After devouring the Taoist priest, the female ghost began licking my grandmother's face. The old woman trembled so violently that even her wrinkles seemed to fuse together. Grandson, Grandma knows she was wrong. These years, I've treated you well, haven't I? Everything I did was for you. The knife that killed me, you sharpened it yourself. Didn't you? Sharpened it to perfection. My sister laughed. Her cheeks flushed red. Funny, isn't it? When I was a granddaughter, I had to do everything. And whatever I did was wrong. Eat a bit more. I'm greedy. Fall ill. I'm lazy. But as a grandson, all I have to do is hand you a pair of chopsticks. And you'd burst into tears, telling everyone how filial I am. My grandmother protested weakly. Da Nha, all girls do those things. You didn't do any more than others. My sister nodded. When I was a girl, my teacher said I was gifted. But you claimed too much studying would ruin a girl. Tore up my books, forced me to quit school. When I became a boy, suddenly I was a genius. The pride of our ancestors. The hope of the family. You couldn't stop planning my future. Strange, isn't it? I was still me. There was a time she didn't dare to ask for much. I only wanted to live. To be human. Why was even that too much? I hugged her, heart aching. She patted my hand gently. It doesn't matter anymore. I'll live again. Just once more. And this time, there won't be any of you in it. The next day, Wang Fu came for revenge, kicking our door wide open. But the moment his men stepped inside, they were so terrified they wet themselves. The police arrived, sealing off the scene. Inside was blood and corpses everywhere, a living hell. Strange markings on the walls. Overturned ritual tools. They guessed the Taoist had used dark sorcery. Deceived everyone, then fled after committing murder. With the priest missing, he naturally became the prime suspect. My brother and I, hiding in the cellar, were the only ones left alive. Through tears, we told them, it was Grandma. She noticed something off about the priest and told us to hide quietly here. My grandmother wasn't so lucky. The shock left her paralyzed, confined to a hospital bed. Luckily, I was older now, and my brother understood things better. With help from our teachers, I passed the university entrance exam the next year and got into a school in Beijing. Everyone praised us as the most filial children they'd ever met. My brother sat beside Grandma's bed, calmly peeling an apple with a knife. The glint of the blade shimmered as her pupils dilated in terror. She trembled, tried to move, to speak, to escape. He simply held her hand and smiled faintly. That's right, Grandma. You risked your life to save ours. Of course. We'll be filial to you, till you're old. Till you're dead.